My name is Enjah Mysterio, and I've been studying tarot and Kabbalah, astrology, mental healing, and spiritual alchemy for over 45 years. Many years ago, I had a transcendent experience, a vision of everything in the universe being connected and of being God, along with every other human being. My core beliefs are these. The universe is composed of mental energy. All humanity is one being. Everything in the universe is inside of each of us. Because we reflect the one will of the universe, we share in that will. We reincarnate repeatedly to learn and grow as spiritual beings. Once we reach a certain level of understanding, we are able to work for the good of humanity, and each incarnation is a further unfoldment of that work. This tarot tableau and the deck are from Builders of the Adytum, BOTA. I studied the BOTA lessons for 15 years. You can go to bota.org for more information about becoming a member and receiving the lessons yourself. These talks highlight aspects of the symbolism of the tarot. Attending these talks will give you methods to use the tarot in your own spiritual work, but no one else can do that work for you. And this is not a guided meditation, this is just information. Meditating on and working with the tarot on a daily basis will bring you much more than I can ever tell you, including insights that apply directly to you and your life. Today we will be talking about the third stage of spiritual unfoldment. And the third stage is called revelation. The three keys are on the sort of tall cubic thing to my right, your left if you're facing me. And the top key is key 3, the Empress. Then the middle key is key 10, the Wheel of Fortune. And the bottom key is key 17, the Star. In the first two talks, I went over the first two stages of spiritual unfoldment, and they were bondage or mirth, and the second one was awakening. So we were in darkness, then we had a lightning flash. Now in this stage we are in starlight. The power involved in this stage is creative imagination, the Empress. This woman is as all the major figures, the major central larger figures, represents the higher self, and in this case the feminine aspect of the higher self. This is one of your powers of consciousness. I'm going to give you the meanings of the various parts of the key because it can help to understand. The number is 3, so that relates key 3 to Bina, the black sphere on the tree of life, which is labeled understanding. It relates it to key 21 and key 12, which are numbered 1 and 2, or 12 and 21, which add up to 3, because in this tradition we can add sideways. A meaning of a number can be the two parts of it or more add together. And key 12 and key 21 are very important keys because key 12 is the first stage of samadhi, the stage where the mind is stilled and there is a realization of the underlying reality of the universe. and that is, of course, the mind of God. Now, you can see that he is hanging upside down from a scaffold of sorts, but it is shaped like the letter Tav, which is the final letter of the series. It's the final letter of the Hebrew alphabet and the series of keys, and it refers to key 21. Now, key 21 is the final stage of samadhi. This is a stage where the awareness of the underlying reality is there, but the person does not have to remain still. In the first stage, there's no ability to move about and go about your business. In this stage, the adept or the person who has become cosmically conscious is able to maintain that consciousness in daily life. And life becomes a dance. We participate in the dance of the higher self or of the mind of God. The entire universe is one giant dance. So back to key 3. This is Venus, the goddess of love. She is also the Great Mother, and that refers again to the Tree of Life and Bina. Bina is the manifesting power, the feminine power of God. It refers to the throat chakra, indicates that there's something important in terms of speech, whether it be silent speech of thought, images, or vocal speech. The Hebrew letter is Daleth, which would be the equivalent in Greek would be delta, which is a triangle, as I'm sure you know. And the delta refers to the feminine organs of generation. The tent flap is the original image that Daleth came from. You can see it's kind of there's a top piece and then there's a vertical to the right. And so she is the door. It means the door. She is the door to life. Just as the womb is the door to life. And I found it very interesting when I was meditating on this key and the key 12 and key 21, which you can see on the tableau. Key 21 is on the bottom right, and key 12 is just to the right of the center key. They both look like this figure is inside a womb, and especially key 12. That could be an umbilical cord. And in fact, most babies are born head first. So they're kind of hanging upside down in the womb. I think that's really an interesting reference. And we're talking about the mother. This key is about creative imagination, as I said. It's about multiplication. We take the seed thought, which is a self-conscious concept or something that we're paying attention to, usually a problem. We put it into subconsciousness, and then she becomes fruitful. So, like a man and a woman unite in the sexual embrace, and the man impregnates the woman, self-consciousness in all of us impregnates our subconscious mind with ideas, thoughts, feelings, actions, things we observe, and so on. And from the preponderant image, especially an image that's held unwaveringly, comes a manifestation in our lives. She gestates these ideas. The next key is key 10. Key 10 is the law through which this power of consciousness works. This is manifestation. Key 3, the Empress, refers to the east. Key 10 refers to the west. And they are connected, strangely, by Key 12, the waters of consciousness, coming out from the center and going to the east and to the west. Now, Key 10 refers to the planet Jupiter. So we have the two benefics, the two great benefics, or the greater and the lesser, in this stage. And this refers to the solar plexus chakra. This is the means through which things become manifest. And it refers to the cycles of the universe. And Ezekiel's vision involved almost everything in this image. The four animals or creatures and the wheels within wheels. Jupiter is the sky god, as I'm sure you know, and the clouds refer to that. And all the planets have cycles. The sun and moon are cycles of light and darkness. And this week, we're at the equinox, where dark and light are equal. 12 hours of darkness and 12 hours of light in the northern and southern hemispheres. In our hemisphere, well, the northern hemisphere where I live, we are going into the dark phase. And it's sort of like the yin-yang symbol, that there's always some darkness, even in the midst of summer, and there's always some light, even in the depths of winter. The Hebrew letter of this key is Kaf, and it symbolizes the closed hand or the closed fist. If you close your fist and look at it, you'll see it forms a kind of a spiral. So it is definitely referring to the ideas contained in this key. It's also considered grasp, the hand in the act of grasping. So if you are trying to understand some concept, this is a good key to use to meditate upon. Key 3 is a good key to use if you don't have any ideas. You're feeling kind of sterile. You run out of ways to do things. Now, I said each planet has its own cycle. Jupiter is almost 12 years, and Saturn is the most familiar. Everybody talks about their Saturn return, which is every 29.46 years. And we're very much aware of that, but there are cycles for each of the planets. Uranus is 84 years, so it lasts approximately a human lifetime, depending. Then the outer planets are well beyond that limit. So they're usually considered to refer to all humanity and not to an individual, because the cycles are not, there's no return usually in a human lifetime. Another practical use for this key is it curbs impatience. So we can allow something to come into manifestation. When we have visualized something and we put a lot of energy into making it manifest, sometimes it's hard to wait till it slowly precipitates into physical reality. It can raise emotional tone. So if you feel down, look at this key. It helps us face important but distasteful tasks. So there are many things we can do to distract ourselves from what's important in our lives. We can do all sorts of things, mental clutter and physical clutter and little frittering away of time. This will help us to establish a schedule and stick to it. But it has to be, all these things are just concepts that we embed in ourselves, and they require action to really come into their fullness. Now, the condition is involved in this stage is key 17, the star. And this refers to meditation. The stage is called revelation, and we receive those revelations in meditation. The Hebrew letter is Tzadi, the fishhook. And in this tradition, meditation is a way of finding solutions that we can't come up with on our own, solutions to our problems. So we take a problem, we choose a problem first, we formulate a question about a specific and very clear and well-formulated question about that problem, and then we ask our subconscious mind to search and to find all associations with this idea, this problem. Each of our subconscious minds is like a bay on the sea of collective subconsciousness. In order to do this, we have to be still. So, as all methods of meditation recommend, we sit still, breathe quietly, let the breath flow in and out without forcing either way. Make sure there is no sound to the breath, because otherwise that means it's a little too rapid. Make it steady and rhythmic. Sit comfortably with your spine erect and contemplate your problem. Sitting still like this also synchronizes our chakras without forcing them into activity. And another way to use this key is to look at it before you begin to meditate. So we have gotten our imagery, we're letting the cycles take care of it. And another use of key 10 is to pay attention to our own emotional cycles, our cycles of ups and downs in emotion. Everybody has them, and everybody's unique, so pay attention to your own cycles. If you want to begin a new project, do it when your mood is coming up. Then the positive energy of that beginning will carry you through the subsequent down cycles of your emotions. And key 17 is associated with the sign Aquarius. And I will talk a little bit about the stars because there are 8 of them, which is very interesting. The 7 traditional chakras are the smaller white stars. The larger yellow star is an image of the radiant energy of the one will. It's a whirling energy. It's the no thing, the origin of all energy. And in the background is a tree, which represents the nervous system and brain. And on the tree is a red ibis, which is a fishing bird. But he's still. So we're actively paying attention. This is a self-conscious activity, but we're very quiet. We're paying attention, we're listening for an answer. The water she's pouring is the waters of consciousness or subconscious mind, and she is purifying the outer senses and stimulating the inner senses. The ripples on the pond indicate the vibration that results from her unveiling herself and pouring knowledge into our personal subconscious mind. Okay, so that is the end of my formal talk. And if anybody would like to make comments or questions, you're welcome to do so.
So I'm assuming people are invited to voice if they want to, correct?
Yes. There's a lot to this stage, and I had a hard time connecting the dots. But it's basically about using our imagination to manifest and to understand our problem. This tradition is ancient. We don't really know when Kabbalah started. I mean, the original stuff may have come from Atlantis through Egypt into the Hebrews, and then they were also influenced by pre-Hindu ideas. Yes. This is a Western form of Kabbalah. This was brought from the Middle East to Europe. Okay, so Maggie says, you recognize the knowledge from the Kabbalah and the Greek gematria and numerology. Yes, they're all very closely related to this system. The Tree of Life, as I present it here, is BOTA, and they put their associations of the keys with the paths between the Sephiroth. And the Tree of Life represents the human being. You can see, if you count them, it has 7 levels. There are 10 Sephiroth, and then they have the connecting paths. Key 3 is way up at the top. It goes between wisdom and understanding. Our creative imagination is a connecting point between the left and right brains in the human body. And it is between the father and the mother. So that's where pregnancy occurs, of course. Father God, Mother God. In Hebrew, Hokmah and Bina. Okay, so in Key 10, there are these 4 creatures. One is a man, so I wouldn't call him an animal exactly. A man for the fixed sign Aquarius. An eagle for the fixed sign Scorpio. A lion for Leo, and an ox for Taurus, or a bull. This shows the stability and persistence of the cycles of the universe. This is kind of like the structure in which these cycles work. The initiating the cardinal signs, then the fixed signs represent kind of like Vishnu, the continuance of the universe, maintenance. And then the ending ones would be the ending signs would be the mutable signs. Maggie says integrating these knowledge systems is a very honorable endeavor, and that was done by many people. I have learned from them. I'm not the source of this information. I'm merely conveying it to you. Yes, Maggie says we are connecting the dots of the universe. In the center are the 3 other creatures. There is a snake, a yellow snake. It represents the vibration of light coming down into the physical realm. Then there is a red Hermanubis. So, you know, the Anubis, the Egyptian jackal-headed god, represents humanity with a human body and an animal head, very interestingly. And it is coming upwards, and only the ears stick up above the center line. So we have the ability to hear the higher, but we're not all of us very, very well developed spiritually. On the very top is the Sphinx, who has the head of a human and the body of an animal. And this is a much more wise way of sorting out. We don't want to think like animals and look like people. We want to be the other way around. We want to think like people and understand that we have these animal vehicles, these bodies that have animal needs. The Sphinx is very still. She is in control, he, she, it, in control of herself, himself, and at a still point. 4 letters, T-A-R-O. And if you go back up, it's T-A-R-O-T, tarot. And there's an old saying that goes with all these letters. Rota ator orat Torah, that the wheel of nature speaks the law. And then we also have Yod, He, Vav, He, which refers to the 4 worlds of manifestation: fire, water, air, and earth. Then inside we have the alchemical symbols of salt, mercury, and sulfur, plus the symbol for Aquarius, which indicates dissolution. So there's a lot in this key. And as we go closer to the center, the circles get smaller, and it's referring again to the 4 worlds. And when we get to the very center, if we can live at the center, then we're not out on the periphery feeling the effects of centrifugal force or being thrown off the merry-go-round. At the center of the merry-go-round, you can just sit there and enjoy yourself. You don't even get dizzy. And the 3 animals again refer to the alchemical principles. When you study each key, you get layer upon layer upon layer of associations, clusters of association. And after a while, it gives you a big interrelated concept. And if we talk long enough about any one key, we'll refer to every other one. It's a pictorial form of ancient wisdom. So these are objects for meditation. And key 17 connects victory, the green sephira, to foundation, the violet sephira. So the reference is Venus, who is also Isis, Urania, the green sphere. That is the sphere of the activity of Venus. So that's key 3 again. So we're referring back to the power of consciousness we're talking about. And the bottom part of the key is that pool, and that refers to Yesod, the sphere of the activity of the moon. So that is the pool of subconsciousness where the animal mind lives, the lower mind, and it is being filled by the feminine aspect of God. And each key shows in some way where it is on the tree of life by imagery. So the mother of the universe, Maya, Gaia, Shekinah. Swami Vivekananda's book, Raja Yoga, is an examination of the sutras of Patanjali, and a very wonderful examination of them. And he also talks about how we create our physical bodies, that our subconscious minds created the body we are in now, and when we reincarnate, we will create the next body. So why not create a body that lives for a longer time so that we can develop further spiritually? So if we want to go further in our spiritual work, we need to pay attention to the body. And that is part of what we're doing here. And we talked last week about Maslow's pyramid and how the pyramid of the hierarchy of needs is really important. We start out with problems that are very mundane. And over time, the problems become more subtle and in some ways more difficult to manage, but they become more spiritual. Well, that's another subject, Maggie. Maggie says not even everyone can reach that high education then job when you can't afford education. This is not a political discussion. I'd like to keep it on subject, please. So does anybody else have a question or comment? Jai says, in all things, great and small, I see the beauty of the divine expression. I have a feeling she's referring to the cockroach. Joe says, do you look at the cards every day and how do you decide? Well, yes, I look at the cards every day and sometimes I do healing work with them. Sometimes if I perceive some weakness in myself or some quality in my personality that I dislike, I will choose a key that helps me develop the opposite of that weakness. If I had to worry about the physical, I would focus on that area of the body where I have pain. If the problem is in the calves and ankles, I would look at this key to perfect that area as much as I can, given the limitations of my heredity. So let's say my problem is psychological. For example, if I tend to be emotionally overreactive to other people or things or events, then I would look at key 11, justice, Libra, and this is a key of balance and emotional equanimity. In alchemy, equilibrium is the basis of the great work. So this is an extremely important key to meditate upon. But if I were just starting out, I would meditate one card or key a day, go through the series several times, go through it from 0 through 21, then go through it at a later time from 21 back through 0, until all those parts of myself are developed. Okay, Jai says, I am confused by the subconscious creating the body and genetics of a family DNA. When a soul incarnates, it chooses the time and place to come in, and it chooses a family situation that will give them the lessons that they need in this particular incarnation. And my understanding is that the soul, at the subconscious level, creates the body using the genetic material available. So it may not be perfect. In fact, I think very few would be ideal.
So when we leave this subconscious creation and we rejoin, although we've never been separated, but we rejoin the soul, that's assuming that we don't know we are always the soul, then the aspect of the subconsciousness goes with us. So the soul contains the subconsciousness and carries it from lifetime to lifetime? I'm confused.
That is my understanding, that when we incarnate in a particular situation, if we look at our astrological chart, the moon contains the memory of our past incarnations. And so, yes, it's carried from incarnation to incarnation. We remember on some level. Obviously, it isn't a self-conscious remembering, so it isn't something that can be accessed by the everyday mind. Does that answer it? So if we can go to that level and understand how to recreate each cell in the body, we are able to then prolong an incarnation for many, many years, perhaps centuries. Some adepts have done that. Maggie says there are 50 billion sentient souls, and now it has faded. The chat has faded from my screen, but in this solar system alone, and that's a lot to incarnate once in a while. My understanding is for a very, very long time, most people incarnate only once in an age, so once every 2,000 years. They have this experience and then they spend the rest of that time contemplating whatever they learn from that experience. When a person enters a spiritual path, they start to incarnate much more frequently. The saying goes in this tradition, first the stone, then the plant, then the animal, then the man, and eventually we will all become adepts, homo spiritualis. And that's our real goal. Because each of us is a potential adept. And people who are on a spiritual path are on their way to this goal. Each problem that we encounter is a lesson that we learn in order to grow spiritually. None of our problems are something imposed on us by some kind of evil force. There is only God. Yes, there are dark forces and there are people who are dedicated to evil.
Going along this line, what I'm hearing you say, which is pretty amazing, is that when we are not very close to the goal of being an adept in this lifetime, we could reincarnate once every 2,000 years. But as we go towards the goal of realizing our own spiritual adeptness, then we can reincarnate more quickly. And it sounds also like not only can we reincarnate more quickly, but we can also possibly help co-create through connection with the subconscious and materialize a body that is healthier than the one that possibly we came in with. We actually learn some skills to manifest a stronger body, or even work through maybe some genetic stuff that we're given through our family DNA. And so I'm basically saying this, but I'm also looking to see if I got it.
I assume you are correct. That's my belief also. This image, Key 21, the world, is the image of a co-creator with God. That's our goal. And to some extent, we're already doing that. When we reincarnate, we have to find the highest possible genetic material. Yes, welcome back, Sky, thanks. The highest possible genetic material and situation that we can find. And that is one reason why we want all humanity to be healthy, be educated, be at peace, and have everything they need so that humanity as a group can incarnate at a higher and higher level, both physically and spiritually. If you have a physical vehicle that is riddled with sickness, it's very difficult to be spiritual. It's the experience of pain and difficulty and tragedy is just not conducive to that. And we want human beings to be creating bodies. We want the bodies to become better and better.
So when you're speaking of this, the pain, the illness, struggle with the body, I'm thinking of Ram Dass and his book called Terrible Grace. And actually, sometimes the doorway to the divine or to that realization is through pain. and often is through suffering. Those of us that were not lucky enough to be born in a family of yogis and have this unbelievable opportunity to be supported and loved and cared for, physically cared for and nurtured. The doorway for us, just like for me, is my wound. But that wound ended up being my doorway to turn it around, to stop being a victim. And I could see very clearly. So I was a witness of me being a victim for a very long time, until I got to a certain point where I realized it was a misinterpretation of my life that was a veil that I actually began to see through. And, it's not like I don't sometimes feel like a victim, sometimes I do. But mostly I'm emerging out of that set of beliefs into another place. So I think suffering sometimes can really hold our focus, and through that focus, we can become something else. Thanks.
Oh, well, I understand what you're saying, and I agree to a certain extent, but at the same time, if we're creating bodies that are the question of healthy bodies and so on, I'm really saying if people are taking care of themselves and making sure that they provide a body, there can be an incarnation of an ascended adept. For an ascended adept to come into a difficult body might be something they can do and, yes, overcome. And for us at a lower level, maybe illness is a lesson that teaches us something invaluable. I agree. But if we want the return of Christed beings, whoever they may be, including, the person we call Jesus and Buddha and people like that, they do need a situation that fosters their growth so that they don't have to overcome huge obstacles in order to become wise. And that's what we're seeking. We're seeking wisdom. Okay, now Maggie also brought up the problem of evil and people who are dedicated to evil. And she said that the Hasidim said, eventually there's nothing but mercy. Well, mercy is higher than severity. When people are overbalanced into severity, they can be cruel, they can be forceful. In a sense, the way the Nazis were, they overcame people by force. But mercy is a higher level of energy, and it can overcome. Love can overcome hate. It is a stronger, light is stronger than darkness. So when people are pushy, difficult bullies, like the Nazis were, sometimes we have to fight them. We have to meet them with severity. But in our hearts, the hating part is the problematic part. Like Arjuna had to fight and kill his relatives. It wasn't out of hate. It was simply because that was his duty at the moment. And if we're going to fight evil, we don't fight it on its own level. We try to rise above that level and send that person. Let's say there's a person in your life that's bullying you. You can avoid them if possible. Fight them if necessary, but never let go of realizing this is a reflection of God. Even in ignorance, each soul incarnating is a reflection of God. Okay, so they're manifesting at a very ignorant level, and they will learn their lessons. I mean, I think the Nazis learned a huge lesson. Everything they built was destroyed, and it persists to this day. There are people who thrive on hate or appear to thrive on hate, who are damaged, ignorant, and vile in their actions and thoughts, as far as we can tell. But hating them will not do anything but drag us down to their level. So that's, I think, why the Hasidim said that mercy, at the end point, there's only mercy. In any group, one person is expressing the highest level. It's not necessarily the leader. It's whoever is living at the highest level in that group.
If you were in the company of that person, would that association be contagious? In other words, would their higher level, their higher energy be contagious? Kundalini sometimes can be contagious. So if somebody is having a Kundalini rising, other people might break out in it. And so it's a very contagious state. But I'm wondering if that's the same with these people that are very, very high up in incarnation, to be near them. Or it maybe doesn't even matter. You don't even have to be near them to benefit from that energy. But I'm curious what you'd say.
Well, my opinion would be that yes, that energy is contagious, and that when we are in the presence of somebody who is, let's say, in the presence of an adept, our feeling tone will be very high, and some of that person's awareness will affect us, because if you're close to a person, your aura is mingling with theirs. But our own spiritual development is in our hands. And I'll give you a story. After Paul Foster Case died, Ann Davies became the head of the order Builders of the Atom, BOTA. Then when she was dying, she designated her successor. She designated her husband, who, because of her influence, appeared to be very, very wise and very, very spiritually unfolded. Unfortunately, after she died, he lost a lot of that. But the point is that he was lifted up by her, but he couldn't sustain that because he hadn't earned it. In this path, we go up the tree backwards from 10 to 1, and we work out the issues of each of these levels. And each of the paths in between shows the relationship between those levels. And we have to work every single path. There are 32, including the 10 Sephiroth. So, yes, you'll be lifted up in the presence of an adept, but whether it will be permanent or not depends upon your efforts.
My other question is, who is it that learns? I'm kind of two minds these days. There's the small self, which is my personality and my being, which has a ton of how to do books, how to improve this personality, what this personality is. So if it's that personality that's moving up the tree, or if it's my soul, and I'm doing either or. I know they're kind of conjoined, but if it's the soul, my understanding of the soul is the soul actually already knows everything. So.
Well, people have different definitions of soul and spirit, mind, body, and so on. My understanding, and this, if somebody else knows more, please chime in. My understanding it is that we are working on the personality. Now, the personality in the Tree of Life, if you look over to the Tree of Life, the personality level is the 3 Sephiroth above the kingdom. So, 9, 8, 7. The kingdom, 10, is the physical. So in a person, in a human being, that would be the physical body. So we're working on the personality, but the identity then, once we work out most of the major issues of the personality level, and we start identifying with the higher self, that's who's working on us. And no matter what we're doing, what I call the higher self is working on us. We're responding to those cues. So I don't really have a sense of the soul working. The soul is experiencing the personality and the lifetime and absorbing all of that. And the higher self is working on us and coaxing us, pulling us up the mountain. So I don't know if that answers it or not. I don't know. I don't know how
I
to.
think it's a wonderful answer. Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's perfect.
Well, Enjah says, my perspective is similar but also a bit different. Please share. I look at all parts of self as teaching and learning. Okay. That together we are growing into something new. Oh, I like that. That's very interesting. And I agree that everybody is learning and teaching at the same time. So Enjah says, so my higher self is a wiser self, but has not necessarily arrived. She learns from the child and from the physical experiences too. And Jai nods. Agreed. Well, okay. So here we get to what was difficult for me to understand in this path, and that is that there is only one higher self according to this. But there is a higher self for the person, the soul, as Jai put it, who is going through all these incarnations. The higher self is experiencing all of our souls, all of our incarnations at once. So the higher self, the one higher self, would be working with us, and then our this is where the terminology sort of breaks down. What I would have considered the higher self, that is the me that incarnated before now and will incarnate later, the sutra, the thread of incarnations, the thread that ties them together, is one being. There's a unity to it. It won't last forever because eventually this whole phenomenon of the universe will end. From the one to the many to the one. Yes, the universe breathes in and out, and everything has its cycles, and then we're back to key 10. Now I need to end this session. I have already given you the notes, so I don't need to do that, but I will let you know that next week we will be discussing the 4th stage of spiritual unfoldment. And the 4th stage is called organization. And that talks very particularly about how we build and rebuild the physical body, how we fill ourselves with light, which comes in through sunlight, food, water, air, and just in general from the spirit.